Okay, whether you got the win in week one or you got the loss, let's just push week one behind us and let's look forward. I've got 5 running back trades to talk to you about today that I believe will heavily improve your chances at a fantasy championship here in 2023. I'm going to give you a couple buy lows and a couple sell highs. And can I just say, with the sell highs, it's easy to hate someone who's telling you to sell a player high. So just make sure you give me the chance to say why. But let's start with the buy low, okay? We'll start with the buy low here. Let's go ahead and buy low on Joe Moneybags Mixon. In week one, finished as the RB27 in fantasy and PPR. He had 13 attempts for 56 yards, 4.3 yards per attempt. He caught 3 of 5 targets for 17 yards. Now, here's the deal. That was unequivocally, unquestionably the worst game for the Bengals offense this entire year. It might be the worst game they will have for the next 5 years, honestly. AKA, it's going to get much better for Joe Mixon and company moving forward. Last week, the Bengals managed a measly 3 offensive points. Only the New York Giants scored less points, and that's because they put up a big old goose egg when they got dominated by the New York Giants on Sunday Night Football. So you might be asking, why is that important? Why is that important? Well, this is what we call an outlier, ladies and gentlemen. In the last 2 seasons, this is the lowest amount of offensive points Joe Burrow and the Bengals have scored. In fact, in the last 2 years, the Bengals have been top 10 in offensive points per game each season, averaging 26.3 and 25.7 points per game in each of those seasons. So you go ahead and ask yourself, what do you think we should rely on more? What we saw in week one, a 1-game sample size, or a 34-game sample size over the last 2 years? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to rely on that large sample size. Come on, we know that this offense is going to be much, much better, and Joe Mixon is going to continue to play a crucial part of this high-powered offense. In week one, Joe absolutely dominated opportunities. Snaps, he had 63% of the snaps, 35 of 56. Routes run, he had 17, which, by the way, is 9 more routes run than the quote-unquote third down running back, Travion Williams. He had 4 targets, which there was only 5 targets to go around in that game, according to PFF. 80% of the time Joe targeted a running back, it was Joe Mixon he was targeting. And he also had 13 carries, 65% of the team's total carries. So in week one, Joe had 17 total touches for the Bengals. Keeping in mind that this offense wasn't even on the field all that much. They had the 4th fewest offensive snaps of any team in week one, and we just saw them give up. They just left Joe Burrow on the sideline in parts of the 4th quarter. So when they go from bottom 4 in offensive snaps back to top 10 or middle of the pack in that category, how many touches do we think Joe Mixon could get then? At the end of the day, we want high volume players on explosive offenses, and that's exactly what you're going to get here with Joe Mixon. Last thing here, keep in mind, last year, Joe Mixon was 7th amongst running backs in targets, and this team just lost Samaje Perine in free agency. Joe is going to be such a safe play for fantasy, and he also has this untapped potential that we haven't seen just yet. So I'm going to tell you guys a couple names, a couple players that I would personally sell high or sell to get Joe Mixon. Now, there's no perfect trade. You're going to have to do some counters, but these are some names that I would use to trade and go get Joe Mixon. First name, Rhamondre Stevenson. I told a lot of people to sell Rhamondre Stevenson before the year. I still feel pretty strongly about it. And my main concern was that Zeke was going to play an important role. And if you look at the snaps and the usage between Zeke and Rhamondre Stevenson, I think it's safe to say that Zeke will play an important role over there in New England. You can disagree with me. That's fine. I would also send away Najee Harris. Jaylen Warren is heavily involved in that offense, and I personally do not see that stopping. You can also send away Dameon Pierce. How about James Cook? Jonathan Taylor, someone's holding on to him. Alvin Kamara, Miles Sanders, DeAndre Hopkins, Deebo Samuel, and Mike Evans. These are some names that you could go ahead and shop around to try and get a Joe Moneyback Mixon. Okay, I gave you a buy low. Now I'm going to give you a sell high. I'm scared to say this name because I know people are just going to clown me in the comments, because I just want you to listen to the reasons why. That's all I ask. That's all I ask. Okay. Is that fair? Let's go ahead and sell high on the king, Derrick Henry. And it's not because he had an incredible game. It's because of the namesake. In week 1, he was the RB 14 on the week. Fine game. He had 15 attempts for 63 yards, 2 receptions on 3 targets, and 56 yards through the air. Now, I want to preface this by saying I do not believe that this is Derrick Henry's best game of the year. That's not what I'm saying whatsoever. I think there are better days ahead for him. I don't hate Derrick Henry. I simply think that based off of the name value and where people drafted him, you can trade him away for names that I feel much better about rest of season. However, we are looking at a potential split backfield in Tennessee. Did you guys catch this? Because if you didn't dive into the snaps like me, if you weren't, I get most people probably wouldn't have done that, because why would you do that? Why would you dive into the snaps? But I dove into the snaps for this team, okay? And it's concerning, okay? In week 1, rookie Tyjae Spears played a huge role. I don't think any of us anticipated Tyjae playing this big of a role already in week 1. Let's look at the snaps. Tyjae outsnapped Derrick Henry 34-30. Even the fact that he outsnapped him is crazy, meaning Derrick Henry played just 47% of the snaps for this team in week 1. Why is that significant? That is significant because in the last 4 years, Derrick Henry has played over 50% of the snaps in 53 of 55 games. That's just without even considering his injuries, right? Meaning 96.4% of his games in the past 4 years, when he's been a fantasy superstar, he played more snaps, more percentage of the snaps than he did in week 1. Why do we love Derrick Henry, guys? We love Derrick Henry because of volume. Those insane, crazy 25 to 30 to 33 carry type of games. And currently, it looks like that could be in danger. Now, if you look at routes run, Tyjae led this category with 20 compared to Henry's 10. Not that surprising. And targets, again, Tyjae, maybe Tyjae's a buy low. Maybe people don't realize this. But Tyjae led running backs with 4 compared to Henry's 2. And in carries, Derrick Henry dominated 15-3. But still, guys, think about this. If I told you before week 1 even started, I asked you, how many carries does Derrick Henry get in week 1? Ain't not a single soul in this world who knows Derrick Henry and has been playing fantasy football for more than a year would have said 15 carries. Like, you can say it now. You cannot lie to me. Everyone would have been saying at least 20 carries, right? I mean, let's be honest. Keep in mind, in the last 4 years, Derrick Henry is averaging a huge, whopping 22.7 carries a game. Regardless, it's not like this was the Titans coming back from a huge deficit. It's not like the Saints were up 28-3 in the third quarter and they're like, all right, got to keep Henry on the sideline. This was a tight game throughout the entire contest. And in close games in the last 4 years, when Derrick Henry was great for fantasy, in those games, we would see Derrick Henry absolutely dominate touches, specifically on the ground. We would see him get 25, 30, 33, 35 carries on the ground in those types of games. And I personally anticipate Tyjae's role growing with the addition also of DeAndre Hopkins. Maybe, just maybe, the Titans aren't going to use Derrick Henry exactly the way that they used him in the last 4 years. After all, they didn't even make it to the playoffs last year, right? So maybe they are realizing they need to change a couple things. My worry ultimately is that if this offense is moving away from being extremely Derrick Henry centric to he's an important part, but not the way it used to be, then I would like to get out now. Because the thing that we loved about him was just the ridiculous amounts of volume that was unquestionable, untouched by any other running back, okay? So here's some players that I would be willing to trade Henry away to get back in return. How about Saquon Barkley? This is an incredible option right here. Saquon Barkley coming off the terrible week 1 game. We know the volume's there. There's no one competing really like Tyjae Spears. And we anticipate that offense being much, much better. Give me Saquon Barkley in a PPR format, a guy who's going to be much more involved in the air as well. Give me Tony Pollard. I had Tony Pollard ranked higher than Derrick Henry throughout this offseason. Got absolutely clowned for it. It's fine. But if there's anyone out there who still loves Derrick Henry and can give you Tony Pollard, absolutely pull the trigger for it. How about Josh Jacobs? I'll take Jacobs. I'll take CeeDee Lamb if you need a wide receiver. Amon-Ra, AJ Brown, maybe Travis Kelce. This could be maybe the perfect time to go out and get the X Factor Travis Kelce. We don't know if he's going to be playing, right? We'll have to monitor his practices. Maybe the person who had him in week 1 lost and they want to get a impact running back like Henry on their team. Go out and get Travis Kelce because that's going to pay off for you long term. And the last idea I wanted to throw out there is 2-for-2 swaps. Okay. So the idea is that you upgrade at a different position other than running back and then slightly downgrade at the running back spot. Okay. So you trade Derrick Henry away for Travis Etienne and you upgrade at tight end. You trade Derrick Henry away for Joe Mixon and you upgrade at wide receiver. You trade Derrick Henry away for Jahmyr Gibbs and you upgrade big time at wide receiver. Same for, let's say, like an Aaron Jones if someone still thinks that he's, a one-hit wonder. So look, none of these trades I'm saying are absolutely guaranteed to get done 1-for-1. I'm giving you ideas. Your league is going to be different to every other league. Everyone's different. Everyone values players differently, but these are some things that I would be trying myself. Okay, let's go back and let's talk about a buy low option here. My second buy low for you guys is Rachaad White. It wasn't pretty in week 1, but we'll talk about why there's some hope. In week 1, he had 19 total opportunities. On the ground, he really struggled, 2.3 yards per attempt, and he finishes at RB 39. But he's worth trading for because ultimately volume is king. And in the Bucs' first game, Rachaad White absolutely dominated opportunities. Check this out. In snaps, 54 of 68 snaps, 79.4% of the Bucs snaps Rachaad White played. Only Josh Jacobs had this kind of massive snap share percentage dominance in week 1. Routes run, he had 21. Chase Edmonds was second amongst running backs with 5. Carries, he had 17. 71% of carries given to running backs on this team were given to Rachaad White. Now, obviously, elephant in the room is the yards per attempt. Rachaad was not efficient. I'm not even going to try to defend that. I'm not going to argue against that. He wasn't efficient at all. However, there are 2 positives I would like to focus on. Firstly, this offense, can we all agree? This offense is much better than what I think anyone anticipated heading into the season, right? I mean, before week 1, everyone out there was willing to go ahead and label Caleb Williams or Drake May a Tampa Bay Buck. We were saying this is going to be a top 3 team in the NFL draft. Drake May, Caleb Williams will be the future. And then they go out and they win the game versus a playoff team last year in the Vikings. We have to agree that this offense will be better than we anticipated, and Rachaad will be an important part of that offense. Secondly, he has a very good bounce back opportunity in week 2. The matchup is very good. In week 2, the Bucs face the Bears, who last week gave up the 3rd most points to fantasy running backs. They gave up 26.7 points to Aaron Jones alone, and he scored 2 touchdowns. Now, clearly, Aaron Jones is a better running back than Rachaad White. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is it is possible to score big points at the running back position versus this defense. We saw that in a small sample size. And thirdly, the last thing I'll say here is he should be extremely cheap. This may be the cheapest buy low I bring you today. It may be. When I released my waiver wire video a couple days ago, I had people asking me if they should drop Rachaad White. Multiple people saying, hey, I think I'm going to drop Rachaad White. I think I'm going to go out for Zay Jones. I'm like, no, don't drop Rachaad White. Don't drop him yet. So the morale for people who drafted Rachaad White is very low right now. Here's a couple players that I would try and go ahead and send away for Rachaad White. Again, see what your league values him like, but I would send away Isaiah Pacheco, Dalvin Cook, Khalil Herbert, Deontay Johnson if people think he's coming back soon, Brian Robinson who came off a good game, Samaje Perine, Raheem Mostert. I would be willing to do that. Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift, if anyone out there still thinks, if there's people who are commenting on our videos saying, Swift's going to be the guy still, he's still going to be the guy. Okay, if there's people out there in your league like that, maybe you sell Swift now. Okay, the second sell high. I think I could get a lot of hate for this one. I would just ask that you guys let me explain. I personally would like to sell high on Tyler Algier. In week 1, he was incredible. The RB4 in fantasy football that week, 15 attempts, 75 yards, 5 yards per attempt. He had 3 receptions and 2 touchdowns. He was great. He was fantastic. He looked incredible. However, I do believe that Bijan Robinson's role is going to continue to grow throughout the year, and I have some historic examples to show you guys as to why I believe that's the case, okay? So it's great for week 1. I think he'll be great in week 2, great in week 3. You know, I don't think he's going to be bad per se, but I don't think many people are. I feel like the pendulum's just swung so far to the other side. Like before the year, no one was really talking about Allgeier, and then he comes out, scores 2 touchdowns, looks great, and now everyone's like, "Oh my God, this guy is like a top 12 back, and he's gonna be a league winner." Like absolutely. So I feel like the pendulum just swung a little bit too much for me. And in some leagues, you will be able to make some good trades sending Tyler Allgeier away. Let's talk about Bijan Robinson. His role will grow over the season. This is nothing new. We see young rookie running backs and their roles continually grow in their first season every single year. Let's look back historically so you can see what I mean. Okay, let's look at 2022 NFL draft. Okay, Breece Hall was in that draft. In weeks 1 to 3, he averaged 14 touches a game. In weeks 4 to 6, that number shoots up to 21.7, and that was a decent backfield he was competing with. In 2022, Kenneth Walker. In weeks 1 to 4, 5.5 touches a game. In weeks 5 to 18, 20 touches per game. Have to keep in mind that the injury to Rashad Penny happened, so a little bit skewed, but I have plenty more examples. In 2021, Javonte Williams sharing a backfield with Melvin Gordon. Remember, everyone's like, Melvin Gordon's a guy. It's always Melvin Gordon now. In weeks 1 to 8, 13 touches a game. Then second half of the season, almost 17 touches per game. His opportunities go up. How about Ramondre Stevenson in 2021? 3.9 touches a game. And then the second half of the season goes up to 15. How about Jonathan Taylor? This is a fantastic example. Jonathan Taylor, in the backfield that he had in his rookie year, there was efficient runners. He looked great. The offense was looking good, funneling through those 2 backs. In weeks 1 to 10, Jonathan Taylor still heavily involved, 15 touches per game, okay? Weeks 11 to 18, a switch happens like that, and Jonathan Taylor goes to a nuclear 22.5 touches per game. How about DeAndre Swift in 2020? 7 touches per game in the first 5 weeks. From week 6 onwards, almost 16 touches per game. How about J.K. Dobbins in his first year? Remember, J.K. Dobbins in his first year was competing with a Mark Ingram in his prime. The Mark Ingram who the year before was a top 12 running back in fantasy. So in 2020, that year, 6.5 touches per game in the first 6 weeks. Week 7 onwards, 13 touches. How about Cam Akers in 2020? You can see first part of the year, 7.6 touches per game, and then goes absolutely nuclear from weeks 13 onwards with over 24 touches a game. Last example, we'll go even further back to the 2019 NFL draft. Miles Sanders. In the first 9 weeks, 11.4 touches a game. Weeks 10 to 18, almost 20 touches per game. Now, hear what I'm saying. I am not saying that you have to sell Tyler Allgeier right now because it's going to be too late if you don't do it. What I am saying is if you own him, keep it in the back of your head that this will shake, the dynamics will shake over the entire year. Bijan will continually, small but surely, start to eat into Tyler Allgeier's role. And that doesn't mean that Tyler will be irrelevant. It just means that he will be less valuable for fantasy. Let's say by the time fantasy playoffs come, he'll be less valuable than he is today. I just think that's very clear. That's very obvious. Now we have to even keep in mind that the guys that I just mentioned historically, those guys didn't even have the draft capital that Bijan does. Top 8 draft capital in the first round. 2 guys that come to mind in the last decade, Saquon Barkley and Ezekiel Elliott. Those are just the guys that come to mind, okay? Saquon Barkley in his rookie year averaged 24 touches a game. Ezekiel Elliott in his rookie year, same, 24 touches per game. Now, Tyler Allgeier is inevitably going to come back down to earth. You have to decide when you want to sell him. He's not going to score 2 touchdowns every game. He's not going to be playing a rookie quarterback in division game against a very mediocre team every single game where they're up, a touchdown and they can just run the ball out. That's not what the game plan will be every week for them. Again, don't hear what I'm not saying. I never said here, you have to sell Allgeier. He's bad. He's not going to be good. He's not going to be a starting running back. I believe he's probably going to be a top 24 to 30 running back on the year. I think that's very safe. However, if someone in your league is overreacting to week one. You could potentially set yourself up for a win by getting a real superstar on your roster. Here's a couple names that I would trade Tyler Algier away for. How about Miles Sanders? I'd rather have Miles Sanders long-term. Alexander Mattison, Ken Walker, David Montgomery, Javonte Williams, Joe Moneybag Mixon, Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs. I feel better about these names moving forward rather than betting on Algier after 1 week of a performance, okay? So speaking of Jahmyr Gibbs, we just talked about him in the buy low or the sell high trade for Jahmyr Gibbs. That's what we're going to do with our last one here. I think you should go buy Jahmyr Gibbs if there's anyone out there who is potentially panicking on him after 1 week. In week one, he was RB36, not a lot of touches, but he was pretty efficient with what he was given. However, remember how I just talked to you guys about how Bijan Robinson's role is going to grow? Well, Jahmyr Gibbs was a first-round running back, and same can be said for him. Everything that I just said can apply for Jahmyr Gibbs in favor of him. And we heard from the head coach before week one that Jahmyr Gibbs might be limited in his first game. They're going to slowly work him in. And then after the game, when the Lions beat the Chiefs, Dan Campbell was asked about Jahmyr Gibbs' role, and here's what he had to say. He said Gibbs was electric, and he's only going to get better. And he's going to get a bigger piece of the pie moving forward. He then goes on to say, we really didn't want to overload any of those guys. I assuming like the guys who are just coming into the team. I think it's important that you go in and let them get a feel of what it's going to be like. That's the first one, Campbell said. Let's go in and make sure that these guys that have been around, the guys that have been, with us for a while, that they get a bigger load. And we just work the rookies in and let them get a feel of it. Now that they've got one under their belt. He goes on to say, so for Gibbs, he'll begin to get more touches now. That was just the beginning last night. So oftentimes you don't want to put too much stock into what a coach says, but to be fair, he said before the game, yeah, we're going to work him in slowly. And he did it. And now after the game, he says, yeah, we're going to get him more opportunities. I imagine he's going to do it. So if anyone out there is worried about Jahmyr Gibbs' performance, keep in mind, Gibbs was a 3rd-round pick in most drafts. I think if people, drafted him and he finished as RB36, I think people might be panicking in some leagues. I'm not saying every league, but if you can go out, I would trade away the following players to get Jahmyr Gibbs. Tyler Algier, I'd rather have Jahmyr Gibbs. Miles Sanders, I'd trade away. Khalil Herbert, Ramondre Stevenson, Brian Robinson, Raheem Mostert, Dameon Pierce, Najee Harris. Those are some names that I would be willing to trade away to get a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs on my team. Keep in mind, be patient with him if you draft him or if you trade for him. Let him have some time to ramp up to the NFL, but I believe it will be worth it, especially when you're in your fantasy playoffs. So keep in mind, last thing I'll say, last year, no team had more fantasy points from the running back position than the Detroit Lions. And I think it's obvious in week one that they plan on using them a lot again in year two. So, or in 2023. Okay. I talked a lot just then. Talked a lot. 25 minutes straight. So do me a favor, go ahead and drop a like. I just want to quickly tell you guys about what we offer on Flock Fantasy, the website. Now, if you use our promo code LAND, you'll get 30% off to any membership on that website. And we offer something called the Fantasy Hotline, which is a direct DM to us for advice. So let's say you're sending out some trades and you want to know exactly what we think. Well, if you use our promo code, sign up to the Mother Flocker tier, then you will unlock a DM where you can ask us anything that your heart desires, okay? And there's also my weekly rankings on the website. There are articles from all the best content creators in the industry over there. Some really bright minds. So if you want an edge on your fantasy leagues this year, again, go ahead and use our promo code LAND. Check out the pinned comment and you will not regret supporting us and getting those perks in return. Thanks for watching, guys. Go ahead and smash that like button. Let me know what you think of the video, and I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Go get a W in week 2. Come on. The season's not over. more dubs are ahead. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.